Have you ever heard of something called salt toxicity? Pigs and salt don't go together well. The reason is because a pig's body does not regulate salt, sodium well. Too much salt causes huge problems. Now, what happens when a pig has too much salt? Well, when a pig has a lot of salt, it causes them to be very thirsty. So they drink, I mean, however much water they have access to. That could be gallons and gallons of water. So when they drink all this water, it's too much. The body can't process it. So it causes an electrolyte imbalance. And pigs have a very delicate electrolyte balance. And so when this gets wonky, gets out of sync, then it can cause a lot of neurological issues, brain swelling, seizures. We'll talk about some of the symptoms that show up or can show up when a pig gets salt toxicity. But first of all, we're going to talk about how this happens. This is a very, very important topic for all of pig owners to understand. The first way this can happen is through diet. Now, obviously salty foods. So if your pig has access to processed foods, people processed foods, chips, packaged foods, frozen dinners, all of those things, they have a lot of salt in them. But also dog food, cat food, and chicken food are all have very, very high salt content. So one or two pieces is not a big deal. The problem comes in where if a pig is face to face with a 50-pound bag of chicken food, dog food, cat food, they can't regulate themselves and just eat a piece or two. If your pig just gets a piece or two, this is not an issue. The problem is that a pig can't stop at a piece or two. So they're going to continue to eat as much of that bag as they can physically fit in their body. And it is going to cause them to become excessively thirsty for hours and hours and hours after they're very full. And so they're going to continue to drink. As they drink this, trying to quench this thirst, then it's going to cause these neurological symptoms, the brain swelling, the seizures. So be very, very careful with your pig when it comes to foods that are very, very salty. If you have dogs, cats, or chickens, these feeds need to be kept out of reach in a container that your pig cannot get it. The bag is not going to work. A pig is very capable of opening a bag. I've seen pigs open amazing things, including doors. So be very careful when it comes to how you're storing your animal feed. Now, the second reason, or the second way that this can happen to a pig is through dehydration. And really, this is the most common way that a pig has these issues, or it's a very, especially on a hot day, or if you live in a climate that is very, very warm and humid, this is where this is a major cause of salt toxicity. So when a pig gets overheated, it gets so hot, or maybe it's just a mediocre day, 75, 80 degrees, but the sun is shining directly on them and they spill their water bowl. You work for 8 hours, you come home, your pig is laying in the sun, panting, and you're like, oh my goodness, you need water. So you fill their bowl and they come running over and they suck it all down in a few seconds. And you're like, wow, you must be really thirsty. So then you fill their bowl again, and you fill their bowl again, and you fill their bowl again, because you're like, well, they're obviously thirsty. They really need it. This is where the problem comes in. When a pig is that thirsty, they can't stop themselves because they're just trying to quench that thirst, but then they're getting too much water in their body, causing that electrolyte imbalance, causing the neurological issues. So let's talk about some of the symptoms of salt toxicity. Obviously, increased thirst. It could be nausea and vomiting, could be no appetite, not being hungry, not wanting to eat, diarrhea. There could be tremors, loss of coordination. Remember, neurological issues, acting like they're blind, seizures. And these seizures can be, they can be what you imagine a seizure to be. What are they called? Like thrashing. Or they could be more in like a trance-like state where you're like, what is wrong with you? Are you okay? Also fever, coma, death, brain damage. I've seen this, standing with their head against the wall, constant urination, just like not being able to control their bladder, just constantly urinating. These are scary symptoms, right? They're super scary. They are serious symptoms. So what's the treatment? What do we do if our pig has been affected by salt toxicity? Time is crucial. It's really important to call your vet and get them in if possible, because the vet is going to be able to relieve some of that sodium, that is that excess salt inside of their body. They're going to be able to pull some of that out. They're going to be able to slowly rehydrate, balance the electrolytes. And it's important that you don't give more water at this point. Even if your pig is extremely thirsty and you just want to relieve that, don't give water, because it will make it worse. Now, if you can't get to the vet, inevitably, this always happens after hours, during the night, on the weekend, on a holiday, at a time when we can't get into the vet. So if we can't get into the vet, what do we do? Number one, pull the water. Give very, very small amounts. I would say maybe like 1/8 of a cup. And it also does depend on the size of your pig. If you have a very small piglet, then you're going to want to give less. You're just going to want to give very small amounts. If you have a huge pig, then you can give a little bit more. You want to give a very small amount, something that is not going to satisfy them, something that is just, I hate to say it, but something that is just kind of wetting their whistle, just enough to wet the whistle. Give it every 20 to 30 minutes, these small amounts. Continue to give that until your pig doesn't want water anymore. When it seems like you offer that small amount of water, they don't care for it, they don't want it, then wait about an hour, and then you can give them a bowl of fresh water. This is a very scary thing. I've seen it firsthand, just not one time, but with one pig. My very first pig, Oscar, that I ever had, I got him in 2004. Unfortunately, unknowingly to me, he had been inbred and starved to keep him small. He was extremely unhealthy. I don't know why, but he had a lot of trouble keeping his electrolyte balance. So this would happen to him just after a small bowl of water. If we gave anything more than that, then he immediately started showing signs of electrolyte imbalance, the salt toxicity. So the first thing that would happen is he would drink a lot and his belly would swell up. And I mean, his belly looked like 4 or 5 times the size of what it should. He looked like a little piglet with a massive balloon belly. And from there, then he urinated continuously. Like, he was always crouching to urinate. From there, it would get to the point where he was staggering like he was drunk. And then it was and he would vomit also. And then he had seizures. He had both kinds of seizures. He would lay on the ground and seize, and his tongue would be hanging out of his mouth. And then he would also have like these trance-like moments where he would stand, walk into the wall like he was blind, and then he would just stay there and lean his head into the wall. It was so bizarre. And this was my first experience with my very first pig ever. It was extremely scary. Of course, at the time, there were no vets in my area that would see mini pigs. I drove several hours, but this was a farm vet. He didn't have any advice for me. He had no idea what was going on. Basically, he just said, keep them comfortable. That was all the information I had. I didn't realize at the time that it was from water. It really wasn't a normal thing for him to just have a bowl of water on a hot day and have these symptoms. Something was definitely wrong with him. And that proved true because he died at 2.5 years old in his sleep. So, it was absolutely devastating, since he was my baby. But I learned so much from having him, and he really fueled in me this desire to help other people that have pigs to be successful, because there was no information out there. And these little tidbits, like understanding the delicate electrolyte balance inside of a pig, it's life or death. Not understanding it and just assuming that they can have all the water they want when they're thirsty, that could mean death in your pig. And it could mean a lot, and it could even mean worse things: neurological issues, not being themselves, change of personality. There could be so many things that could happen with neurological symptoms. Now, what do we take away from this? Number one, we take away the fact that we need to keep salty foods away from our pig. Anything that is going to make them excessively thirsty and really want to suck the water down is a problem. So we keep all those salty foods away from them. That's one. Number two, make sure that our pig has access to water, especially if they're outside. Now, I do teach a lot about how pigs inside that have access to water 24/7 have a lot of accidents. So we need to be smart here, okay? If we are not leaving water down for our pig 24/7, then we need to be offering it several times a day, and take your cues from your pig. If when you put water down, your pig's like, oh, takes a little drink and walks away, okay, your pig is fine. They do not need a ton of water. But if when you put the bowl down, your pig is sucking water down the instant it's down, acting like they haven't had a drink all day, then you need to offer water more times during the day. You need to offer the amount of water that your pig needs. Outside pigs, or when your pig is outside, it needs to have access to water, especially when the weather is hot, when the weather is humid, or when the sun is beating down on them. They should have shade. They should never be stuck in the straight under the sun. It should never be beating down on them unless they want it to. Pigs do love to lay in the sun, but it's very important to offer them shade. No salty foods, access to water at all times, or at least offered water several times a day. As a little side note, there are a couple of products that a lot of us have in our homes that can also contribute to this that maybe we hadn't thought of. One, if you have a water softener, what do we put in our water softener is salt. So the water has salt in it, and that can make your pig more thirsty, causing them to drink more water. So what we do is, for our pigs, we have a spigot in our basement and our spigot outside that are not attached to they come before the water from our well goes through the water softener. So that is the water that we offer our pigs and that we give them to drink. Or maybe you could filter the water. That would take some of the salt out, or buy bottled water. I would figure something out in my own house because I don't want to have to buy water for my pigs, but that is completely up to you. You could also collect rainwater. If you have something like some kind of a system set up, you could collect rainwater for your pigs. That would be free. That would be, after setup, it would be very easy. Another thing is, in the wintertime, what do we put down when our sidewalk is slippery is rock salt. And although none of my pigs have ever messed with any salt. We don't put a lot down. We just put a little bit on our steps from our porch. But you need to watch, because if you have a large area that you're putting rock salt down and your pig gets a whiff of that, that's a chemical. We do not want our pig eating that. So be very careful with that rock salt. Activated charcoal. A lot of people give their pig activated charcoal. Activated charcoal is wonderful. It's a binder. It does bind to, good and bad minerals, but it's important that if we are giving our pig activated charcoal, maybe daily, or I don't see how less often would be an issue, but it is important to realize you don't want to be giving them a huge dose because it does have salt in it. If you live by the ocean or you go on vacation, ocean water does have salt, silly. It does have salt, so it's important to be careful. Like if you take your pig to the ocean, that if they are very thirsty and they're trying to drink that, we want to offer them, bring bottled water, bring something else that they can drink that is not the salt water from the ocean. Many of us also have Himalayan salt lamps. Make sure that those are kept up. We actually have a couple of night lights that are Himalayan sea salt lamps, and we make sure that we keep them up high so that my pigs can't lick them, because they will. They taste good, they're salty, and my pigs love the taste of them. So be very careful with those. And the last thing is Play-Doh. If you have small children who play with Play-Doh and they inevitably drop it all over the floor, that is also very salty, so it can cause issues as well. This topic is very important. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram or Facebook, or put it in the comments below, send me an email, go to my website, autumnacresminipetpigs.com, and you can send me an email or send me some kind of a form request for information. Very, very important topic. So I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.